Hello and welcome to Data Demystified, the podcast where we look beyond the buzzwords to find value in MarTech, AI, and data for marketing. My name is Kevin van Kalkeren, I'm CPO at Onmark, and in this episode we'll dive into the widely used term Gen AI, generative AI. What does it have to do with marketing analytics? Well, there's a growing flood of Gen AI-powered tools that promise to maybe automatically build your dashboards and your data pipelines, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. Interpret your data sets, even generate campaigns. I mean, we've built a company around a tool, HiGem, that actually finds patterns in your customer journey dataset based on AI automatically. So yes, it's out there. It works. Interpretation, that's a different thing. We'll get to that in a second as well. But maybe just ideas from your metrics. See anomalies. They can act as agents to respond to your data questions and even help you further into your analytics. So there's a lot of potential out there. Even beyond the creative, but just in crunching the data, writing your tools, writing your pipelines, and they're very exciting. They also raise risks. One obvious one is, what do we do with sensitive or proprietary data? So there are companies out there that have the scale and the knowledge or the budget to create their own agents, run them on their own infrastructure, train their own models, or at least use a foundation model, what they call it, and then fine-tune that to their own corpus, their own training data, to tweak it to their own needs, which means that also you have the benefit of not having to share your input with other parties. But if you take any run-of-the-mill Gen AI agent, browser-based, and you upload a data set and ask them, what's the trend in my sales, including the numbers, maybe the account numbers and the information about your accounts, you're sharing sensitive data. And even if it's not a breach of privacy, at least it's something that is typically your own. And yes, you can opt out for certain retrain programs, typically with most of those agents, but still you're sharing something that normally you would not share with your competitors. If you leave it in the bus, people will be very cross. And at the same time, sometimes we don't think twice about that. Or even we might upload entire database schemas and just ask, write queries for me, which is still, it's your IP. Someone worked very hard on building that database schema. And the value of those actions, something that took weeks, months to build 5 years ago, might be less time now, but still there's not just value in time spent, but also intellectual property that might not be worth sharing with an agent that you don't know what it's gonna do with it. This also includes note takers, by the way, but that's a different topic. If you're sharing those external systems, that's a privacy risk. Of course, another thing is generative AI. It means to generate answers based on training input, but still, so they can provide very confident answers based on incorrect or incomplete or outdated data. Back in the day, ChatGPT, for instance, would not have direct internet access, would be trained on data that was a year or older, which means that you don't have the latest info. But overall, the model generates a response based on what it knows. There's very little self-reflection. And lately I've read papers about tools that actually, when asked to tell the user how they came to certain conclusions, consciously omitted certain thought steps. So when trying to trace how they came to an answer, they would tell you a different way than they actually did. Which is not considered lying. So this doesn't have to be a metaphysical discussion about the power of AI and their consciousness, but very much a discussion about the effectiveness of that tool, the confidence we should have in their answers, and the amount of data they can actually use. I've tried this with HiGem. I've had an anonymized clean data set of patterns we found in a customer journey set. And I've asked a tool, by uploading the data set with patterns we found, could you be my interface to this? So tell me what happened on a Tuesday. So I had a customer journey that was about registering for a sign-up process in an e-commerce setting. And I'd give it patterns, some of them including days of the week, some don't. I knew there was not a pattern that evolved particular Tuesday-based actions, but still it would come up with a response. And yes, those things will improve over time. But back in those days, it would very confidently say, yes, on Tuesday, this page had the most traffic, so probably should allocate your budget to steer more traffic to that page on Tuesdays. Well, I knew that there was no such pattern in the dataset, so that conclusion was a hallucination. Now, a particular topic within training models is getting data. And getting data in this day and age, even with all the scraping we can do, there might not be enough. There might be privacy risks. There might be limited access to data. So there are streams and packages and what have you that create data for you. And that seems weird, but there is synthetic data out there, or you can generate, that can either be used for test purposes, but also for training purposes. Because if we can take some actual real live data and then oversample that to a way, generalize it in a way that we can create variations on the data that is good for training, but doesn't have to be real data, we can train models on it. And this goes way beyond Gen AI. This has applications for other tools as well. We've been doing this before the Gen AI hype, although they do kind of run parallel in terms of popularity, synthetic data being more of a data nerd topic than Gen AI itself. But if we can simulate data, it might not be too far of a stretch to say, can we not use Gen AI to simulate conversations with our customer personas? I know there's companies that already do this, that already facilitate you having conversations with your customer personas, right? You might want to spar with your AI version of your customer. If I know this is a typical customer I have, I might build 3 agents, 3 bots, and I'll ask them what they think about these campaign ideas, my creatives, my texts, my propositions. I think there's value in that, but there's also risks. Like I said before, those models are good, a couple of things, but they're not always rooted in truth, and they're not always bound by just telling you the truth. Our large language model, an LLM, is built to tell stories. The good side for that is good data analytics should be storytelling, right? It's complicated, and even in this day, to find anomalies and good finds, get good data, derive the right conclusions, use the right statistical tests if you need to, build a good model, get a predictive and robust model out there, moving it to production. We've talked about this in different episodes as well. Getting data initiatives, data science initiatives into production effectively, where a business case also makes sense. That is something that's very, very complex. And even in this day and age, where writing the code might be something you can just ask a bot or an agent to do, the entire value chain and checking its performance, checking the business case for it, that's still, luckily, a human effort. But all of that, in the end, is not so effective if you cannot sell it internally. So if I know which customers are going to go away, I'm at some point just going to make a story out of that in my head, right? A good marketeer should be able to turn that finding these companies or these customers are going to go away into a narrative, into a hypothesis, into something that is tangible to us, that speaks to us as individuals, as humans, talking about other humans, because it's about humans that are going to go away. The data you have is of behavior that certain other humans conducted. So good data analytics and the presentation of your analytics does very much involve storytelling. And if you're talking storytelling, who does that better than a model that's particularly trained on language, on storytelling? Data, for a large extent, can be reporting, can be just giving us a report, a PDF version filled with KPIs and some trends to give to your executive board or to give to your management suite. But the interpretation of what's happening, finding ideas, optimizing your campaigns, looking for what content works, how we can nudge a customer to the next phase in their customer journey, that involves a certain idea of creativity, being able to move from something very concrete and very tangible as numbers to something abstract, like an idea, a trend, a theory of behavior and hypothesis. So the raw data might have the clues hidden inside it, but will the spreadsheet ever inspire you? So what do we do? Because definitely there is value in this entire chain for Gen AI. But how do we use this safely? And what's our role as humans then? Before we get to that though, every episode we talk about a buzzword. What is the truth? What is not truth? What is just bogus? And in this case, we'll have another listener's question to talk to you about that. So here's the question.
What is AI, and is all AI Gen AI?
So yeah, with the hype of OpenAI and Mistral and Perplexity, Gemini and so on, Gen AI has become kind of constantly conflated with the overbranching term AI, artificial intelligence. The field of AI is way older. This goes way back to the 40s and 50s of the previous century, maybe even before that. So calculating machines that are doing tasks that require something intelligence that we normally would leave to humans. Gen AI is a subset because it creates something new based on what it learned in the past. But there's other cases as well. So machine learning, where it would train on previous data to make predictions. That's a field of AI typically. Language production is one that comes with Gen AI, but we used that before. Your autocomplete on your phone was a form of AI sometimes before Gen AI was around. Same thing goes for computer vision, where we recognize images as they come in to see if they are cat or dog, neighbor or parcel delivery guy. So think of Gen AI as the creative cousin in the AI family. Under the entire umbrella, it generates, others can classify or cluster or predict. It's a version of it, and it's particularly the most powerful and most popular at the moment, but not the only one. So data nerds like me might be very pedantic and say, no, this is Gen AI, not just AI. How we might go from using Gen AI to not replace all of analytics, the use of synthetic data, how tempting it is to talk to AI as our AI-generated personas. And I think this has value. So let's talk about that a bit more. There are platforms out there that use actual data to train models, AI personas, you can talk to. So there's a company in the Netherlands called Volgsportret, and they make a portrait of our people. So there's about 100 bots you can talk to, and they are rooted in actual customer data. It has to be said that this is generic data. So it's data that classifies them as a person, maybe based on their census data as well, social demographics, maybe psychodemographics. But of course, they are very much a representation of the entire population. They're not your particular personas, right? So this means that they are good at giving you an overview of what the Dutch population looks like, and which of those different segments might be relevant to you or your offering, how they might respond to your offering to a certain extent. But that is the prerequisite, I'd say. Because it's very easy to prompt an AI to give you answers based on what you think the image of your customer is. And then it's not grounded in real customer data. For one, we have biases. So even if I were to just give my idea about my ideal customer to an AI and tell it, this is what my ideal customer looks like, pretend you're it, and I'm going to give you my new marketing creatives, and you tell me what you think, that's very much biased. You'll notice more and more that those AI agents are definitely there to keep you hooked on the tool. They're giving you compliments. They're giving you feedback on what a thoughtful and interesting questions you're asking them. So there's a selling point in there as well, where our behavior is being modified while we're trying to modify its behavior. It's a very weird loop, but overall that means we come in with our own biases. We tell it what our customer probably is. Then we have to ask ourselves how much rooted in truth that is. How well do we know our customers? How fact-based are our personas? But even if you have very valid personas, then still we're going to give it our description. It's going to translate that to its own instructions. And then trying to beat that is going to answer your prompts, which are also a bit biased. So I think they have value if you combine those maybe first off insights with actual customer interviews. Double check it with support tickets, campaign performance. So Gen AI can be very powerful, but not to fully replace actual customer contact, actual customer data. But this is first line of defense or maybe first line of inspiration. Sure. Especially if you're talking to generic audiences. This is like you would for when you brief a copywriter. This is intended for people that have an executive power in a company, B2B. This is the company size. This is their role. That might work. But to the actual extent that you want to talk to the customers behind that role, that pattern, I wouldn't leave yourself in the hands of a tool like that. On the other side of the spectrum, when it comes to the role of Gen AI in doing analytics, newer platformers in BI, they will have an agent. They will they will not actually create data for you to talk to your clients, but they might have an agent for you that helps you do the analytics yourself. So instead of before where you have to drag and drop your reports, try and find the right metrics, maybe write SQL to pull up the data first, you can now ask it. So they have built in their own clients, their own agents that do this for you. And that helps a lot because that means that even someone that's less technical can actually ask for a more complicated analytics process and get the right results back. That has a big caveat. It does mean we all have to have a good single source of truth. See my previous video about that. And we have to make sure that we all talk about the same metrics, the same definitions. There's nothing confusing about that. So if I'm asking what happened to traffic after our email campaign, then our email campaign has to be very precise and well tagged so I know which traffic originated from the email campaign. Probably have to be more specific, which email campaign, in which period and all that. And you hope that this agent is good enough to ask you about these questions as a follow-up. But if it's not, you have to be very specific. And also you have to hope that the platform only translates your question, natural language question, to a query. I know some platforms use the term natural language querying for this because you have your own natural language, human language, which then turns into a question it can fire off at the database engine. If it does that without any conflation, hallucinations, I think that's a huge time saver. And also it democratizes analytics. The marketing teams that want to see the instant results or they want to do the analytics themselves, they don't have to wait on the data teams to have performance, which is good because in the end, the data is not just there for data scientists. It should be there for marketing and sales as well. And you want to maximize the data you've got. This is also why we built HiGem, for instance. So what you need is something safe, like that, an isolated environment, like a more premium BI tool or like HiGem, where you can have your own data, upload it in a way that it's your own environment. So we're not just tapping into a broad set of data sets and we can run it on your own data. So in this case, HiGem would use your own Google Analytics data. You can upload it to our environment. Only you can access it. We're not training a language model on the actual contents of that data yourself. And then we use our algorithms to produce patterns that explain why certain customer journeys ended well and why certain didn't. So isolated environment, very safe. You have control. The algorithms do the heavy lifting for you, but you're not required to just give all of it up or make your competitor smarter based on that. So I think that's a good way to think about it. How can you use algorithms in a platform that is safeguarded, where you're not just uploading stuff and don't know who is using it, but also be efficient. Now, if you're looking to sound smart at your next social gathering, maybe professional congresses, here's a take you can just throw out there at the drinks table. Yes, Gen AI is powerful, but right now it's remixing what's already out there. That means your own original ideas, your knowledge, your positioning become even more valuable. What that speaks to is Gen AI works by drawing on what it knows. It's trained to take in a lot of data, a lot of information, language, and boil that down to a very consolidated representation of that language and all the interconnectedness between language, questions and answers it has previously read. And then when you prompt it, reproduce some of that in a way that is handy, that is spot on. And it might be very good, but it shouldn't be used for the core of what you're doing. Because when you're doing something new, you shouldn't just lean on what was happening in the past. If everyone is using the same tech, the real advantage lies in what's uniquely yours. So that means your value proposition, your customer understanding, your purpose. Those should be your moat. This is where you draw the line between what AI can give you and what you should not give away to that AI to retrain. So use Gen AI to scale, to inspire, to accelerate, but don't let it fully define your strategy. Maybe fact check it, maybe use it as a rubber duck, but not fully steer on it. So maybe as a follow-up question at that meeting, I'd ask, how do we protect and reinforce what's uniquely us when everyone else is using the same AI tools? All right, so we've talked about Gen AI in the entire context of analytics, how that might shape the way we use analytics, how it might democratize it, how we might use Gen AI to interpret certain things. But the value is in the combo of our own human judgment, what we know, what we think is right, where we can see what is not explained in data or cannot be expressed in data, and where AI can bring us scale, where it can help us parse data quicker and give us insights, and where we can create hypotheses that are of strategic value. So I wouldn't replace dashboards, but I would reimagine what stories your data could tell if you just knew what questions to ask. Now, if you get a buzzword, a concept you'd like us to be breaking down, submit it for a future episode. And if you like more about this, data, AI, MarTech, then be sure to check us out for next time, and I'll see you then.